Hi, how are you?
Hi. Danny, your notes thus far on the performance, I believe the Thailand one was one of the best physical performances by the team in 3 years or something.
Yeah, so basically our highest outputs over the last 4 years was against Myanmar away in that first qualifier and the match against Thailand.
So how did the UAE game go comparatively?
Our numbers were a little bit lower, but you need to remember this isn't just our performance. It obviously encompasses all of football as well and the way the match goes. So I would have expected that they would be a little bit different having seen the match.
From your perspective, which is the biggest challenge of coming to a country like UAE, these conditions, how do the boys adjust most to it?
Well, we're very lucky we came here on the 20th of December, so we had some good time to adjust. I think that might be why we started the tournament in such a quick fashion.
Playing a third game inside, say, 11, 12 days, how challenging will that be physically for the guys?
Yeah, 9 days. So
9 days, sorry.
yeah, it's obviously very different to what they normally do with their clubs, but we've focused on this in our training. So we know what they're going to perform roughly in a game physically, and we make sure that we get multiple amounts of this in a week. So we've pretty much simulated physically what an Asian Cup looks like. So the players they know what to expect come this third game.
Can you give us some ballparks about the rough distances that the team ends up covering in a match?
Yeah, great.
Typically?
So our players cover about 10 to 12 kilometres in a game. Of that, about 2 to 3 kilometres is high speed running. So that's the quick pressing up and down. There's about 30 sprints per player, and about 140 accelerations and decelerations. So that's that sharp change of direction, small spaces. So yeah, it's quite involved for the players, but we know what they do in a game, we know what they do in a week, so that's how we get them best prepared physically.
Are there any specific positions which see a lot more of the running?
Obviously, the position's a little bit different. Obviously, the centre backs don't do so much. Obviously, the wide players. You would have noticed a couple of our younger players we've introduced have really turned things around and really increased these numbers, and maybe this is a reason that we've impacted a few games slightly more. So yeah, positionally they're all slightly different.
There has been an issue of starting very strong, but in the middle the passing goes to the other opponent, and we sort of taper off in our intensity. Is that something that you anticipate?
I think that more comes down to the game. I only manage the physical side as such, but obviously you have to consider what the other team are doing. You have to understand the game plan, and obviously what you do with the football can be just as important as what you do without the football. So what you make is a good point. It comes down to the game. But
So we've just seen India starting strong in each half.
Yes.
But towards the middle, it seems the other team just is that a fitness thing, or is it just?
I think that's the way
they
the games have gone, to be honest.
Like there are certain drops in intensity, like periods of drops, and then they pick it up again. Like, and have you been working on it like little?
We work. Yeah, we definitely we work with our players. Sometimes we will do our hard work at the start of the session. Sometimes we'll do it in the middle. Sometimes we'll do it at the end when they're under fatigue. So we definitely working on having them performing at every part of the game.
Does part of your work also involve analyzing the opponent, and what do you expect from Bahrain?
Yeah, so that we have analysts.
Yeah.
So they've been up in the stand, and they've actually been watching all the other teams play, and they're way ahead of where we are in knowing who's coming up and how to best manage different opponents. So.
How similar or different will Bahrain be to UAE? I mean, what do you anticipate from the game in terms of?
It's probably not a question for me. That's probably one for the analyst or the coach.
We are expecting to get into, hoping to get into second round, and there might be a possibility for us to play 120-minute games. How different will the preparation be for that?
We've played one game with extra time in the last 4 years, and that was the SAF Cup final back in Trivandrum. And I think you'll remember that we finished much stronger. We came from a goal down to win that. So I have no problem with us playing 120 minutes, and we also have a longer rest if we get to that
But
stage.
it's Afghanistan, and we might get South Korea or China.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
We're in a much better position than we were back then.
So you spoke about all these numbers about the distance covered, and how often is like the correlation with the results reflected in these numbers? Like, is the result reflected in the number? I mean, if there is like considerable drop, you're not doing that as well, or does it reflect in the number?
It doesn't directly reflect performance. I think in women's football there's a correlation between performance and output. In men's football, football is so complex. There's so many different areas coming in. It's the tactics, it's the techniques, it's taking your chances. So it doesn't directly correlate, but it can give us a good indication. It can give us a good indication on where players can best be used tactically. It can give us an indication of what we need to do around training to make sure they're physically at their best to perform in the next game.
So your approach is just to get like, how do you, so as you said, there's no real correlation.
Yep.
So how do you like set your target? Like if you in a certain game there has been certain number, do you need to increase that, or like how do you go about that?
So basically if our players haven't been exposed to a certain value, we need to do that around our training to make sure that when they get into these intensified training periods like the Asian Cup, that they are able to continually output to the highest level, and we need to make them prepared for the worst case scenario. So that's something we've really focused on.
Sometimes Constantine uses players in a different position than they're used to back at their clubs. Is a consultation with you part of that process in determining where they should play?
Yeah, definitely. We look at physically what they can output and where they can influence the game, and that can be part of the reason. It's my job to provide the manager with the players in the best possible condition and the information that really helps him to do his job.
So did he consult with you about Ashik? What did you tell him?
We've been watching Ashik for a few years. I worked with him in the under 19s back in 2015, so he's not a surprise to us, and obviously he's quite dynamic in his output. So yeah, we obviously the consultation, the information has been given to him.
So the aim is just to increase the output for you personally, for the players?
Not necessarily in game. It's making sure they're prepared for the output that they might have to do in the games. Okay. And obviously the better they can manage this output, the better they can perform technically and tactically as well.
You've been with Indian football for a while. Have you noticed an overall increase in output over time? Is Indian team getting better that way? And like, I'm just not just talking about this squad, just the overall players that you come across various age groups and all that. So overall, is Indian football getting the players increasing?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, as we spoke about earlier, the fitness testing results were fantastic this camp, and the output of our first game was fantastic. So I think that's a really positive sign, and I think that comes from the work ethic and what's been instilled by the manager in his values and philosophy, and what we've carried through as me, all the medical staff, and my assistant Joel as well, who's all helped with that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.